Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Jacob will be the one to lead the investigation into Kenny's death, and from the moment he steps into it, the lines between duty and family begin to blur in ways he never imagined. It starts with a single file, the reopened case report on Kenny's death, something buried quietly 6 months ago as an accident. But Jacob knows the signs of a cover-up when he sees them. The timestamps are off. The witness statements feel rehearsed. The report is neat, too neat. He takes the case, despite the murmurs. Despite Malone's warning. Detective Marcel Malone meets him in the hallway the same afternoon the reassignment is finalized. Malone's jaw is tight, his voice low. "You don't want to dig here, Jacob. Trust me. This case. It's not just a case." Jacob responds with nothing more than a nod, but he keeps walking. Malone follows. "I'm telling you, it involves people close to you. You're not going to want to see where this goes." Jacob finally turns. Then maybe you shouldn't have let it go this far. At first, Jacob's approach is methodical. He starts with Kenny's known associates, speaks to 2 of his old roommates, then traces a series of phone records that point toward a blocked number contacting Kenny repeatedly in the week before his death. That number, through triangulated data, leads him back to Vernon, an elusive name in the town's undercurrent of hush money and silent deals. Vernon is quiet when Jacob shows up at his home, a man used to slipping beneath the radar. But Jacob's badge carries weight. "You were supposed to pay Kenny something. Why didn't it go through?" Vernon fidgets, eyes darting to the shadows of his kitchen. "I was ready to. I swear. But I got told to back off." "By who?" Vernon hesitates. Jacob leans in. "You either tell me now or I come back with a warrant." Vernon caves. "It was Bill." The name hits Jacob like a blow to the chest. He doesn't react outwardly, just closes his notebook and walks away. But inside, something breaks. He doesn't call Bill. He doesn't ask for an explanation. Not yet. Instead, he digs deeper, questioning Malone's original statements in the case file. That night, he reviews CCTV footage from the alley where Kenny was last seen. A shadow crosses Kenny's path at 11:36 p.m. The quality is poor, but the figure's posture is unmistakable. It's Malone. When Jacob confronts him, Malone denies everything. "I was off duty. That footage is wrong. You were there." Malone shrugs. "I didn't shoot him." Jacob's blood runs cold. That choice of words, "I didn't shoot him," it means Malone knows Kenny was shot. But the official cause of death was never listed as a shooting. The scene had been scrubbed clean. The report claimed overdose. Jacob pushes harder. And in the files he's not supposed to have access to, in the off-books paperwork tucked into the precinct server under a password-protected folder, he finds a second autopsy report. Unofficial. Conducted before the state medical examiner could step in. Cause of death, single gunshot wound. Back of the neck. Clean. It's all there. And it's all pointing toward Malone. But the most damning part isn't Malone's role, it's the signature on the bottom of the authorization document. Bill Hamilton. Jacob doesn't sleep that night. He reads the file 3 times. Then he drives out past the city lights to the old farmhouse where his Uncle Bill now lives alone. Bill greets him on the porch with a slow nod. "I figured you'd show up eventually." They sit. No words for a while. Just the creaking of wood and the whistle of wind. "I know what you did," Jacob says. Bill doesn't deny it. "And now you have a choice." Jacob's jaw tightens. "Kenny was trying to do the right thing. You made sure he couldn't." Bill sighs, old and weary. "Kenny was going to expose Martin." "Martin made mistakes, yes, but if Kenny talked, your cousin was looking at 20 years minimum. He wouldn't survive prison. So you had him killed." I gave Malone a solution. One that ended the threat quietly. No public trial. No headlines. Just silence. Jacob stands. "And you live with that?" "I sleep just fine," Bill replies. "But you're the one with the badge now. You're the one with the files. So, what are you going to do, Jacob? Lock up your uncle? Turn in your cousin? Put Malone behind bars? You want to carry that for the rest of your life?" The weight of it all nearly crushes him. In the following days, Jacob isolates himself. He doesn't report the findings yet. He locks the evidence in a separate safe, out of department reach. He reviews it every morning, hoping something will shift, something will tell him which path won't destroy everything he has left. He meets with Martin under the pretense of a family dinner. Martin, nervous, tries to pretend nothing is wrong, but Jacob watches him closely. The moment they're alone, Martin cracks. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt," he says. "I told Bill I could handle Kenny. But then Malone showed up, and it was done before I could stop it." "You still covered it up," Jacob says. Martin's voice is small. "I didn't know what else to do." Jacob returns to work but keeps the case quiet. Malone, sensing the shift, begins to grow desperate. He corners Jacob one morning outside the station. "You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly." "Do you?" Malone hisses. "Because if I go down, I'm not going alone. Everyone's name gets dragged." Jacob's heart pounds. "Then drag them. But you'll do it in a courtroom." That night, Jacob finds himself staring at the envelope that contains the entire truth. He weighs it in his hands like it's a live grenade. If he turns it in, he brings down the men who raised him, protected him, taught him what loyalty meant. But if he hides it, he becomes part of it. He becomes them. He looks in the mirror and sees his batch. He doesn't recognize himself anymore. And that's when he realizes no matter what he chooses, something is about to die. The days after Jacob discovered the truth became a slow, suffocating descent into silence. He didn't speak of the files, didn't turn over the autopsy, didn't confront Martin again. Instead, he moved like a man trapped in an invisible current, knowing every stroke could pull him further from shore. He started skipping morning briefings at the precinct. His colleagues noticed the more offhand jokes, no more late-night drinks after patrol. But no one dared ask. They saw it in his eyes. Something had broken. Malone, on the other hand, began cleaning house. He deleted old emails, cleared his phone, and visited 2 old contacts in internal affairs, just to test the waters. He knew Jacob had enough to bury him. But he also knew Jacob hadn't moved, which meant he was still considering the cost. Bill was the quietest of them all. He didn't reach out to Jacob. He didn't show up at any family events. He stayed tucked away at the farmhouse, tending the land like nothing had happened. Word around town was he'd been planning to retire soon, to sell the land and leave the state. No one had seen Martin since the dinner. Then came the letter. It arrived in Jacob's mailbox in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, a single sentence typed in block font. "If you won't finish this, I will." There was no signature. But Jacob knew the weight of it. Someone else was getting close. Someone with less to lose. He checked the surveillance server that afternoon only to find that 2 files tied to Kenny's case had been wiped. He pulled every login record. Only one name came up. Malone. The pressure tightened. Jacob drove to the farmhouse that night. It was past 10. The windows were dark. He knocked twice. No answer. When he opened the door, he found Bill sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty bottle of scotch beside him. No glass. "You're running," Jacob said. Bill didn't lift his head. "No. I'm waiting." "For what?" "For you to decide who you are." Jacob sat down across from him, the only sound the faint tick of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. "I thought being a cop meant protecting people," Jacob said. "But I've spent the last 3 weeks protecting 3 men who took a life and buried it." Bill nodded slowly. "Welcome to the family." "I'm not proud of that." "You were never meant to be proud. You were meant to endure." Jacob stared at him. "You think that justifies murder?" "I think protecting your blood justifies almost anything." "You keep saying that. But Kenny had a family too." Bill finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. He was a threat. Jacob stood. "No. He was inconvenient." "There's a difference." Outside, the wind picked up, brushing leaves across the gravel road. Jacob left without another word. The next morning, he received a call from an anonymous tipster. The voice was young, nervous, male. "I saw something the night Kenny died," it said. "I saw Malone. He had a gun. I didn't come forward because I thought it was just a robbery." Jacob traced the call to a gas station on Route 17. He checked the nearby traffic cameras. Sure enough, a grainy image showed a figure near the alley that night, same hoodie, same walk. The same witness who'd vanished. Now it wasn't just theory. Now it was undeniable. He opened the safe that night and pulled the files again. He laid them out on the table. The documents. The photos. The time-stamped call logs. He read Kenny's name over and over until the letters blurred. Then he picked up his phone. He called Internal Affairs. Not to report Malone. Not yet. He called to request a meeting. But by the time he showed up at the station, Malone was already gone. His desk cleared. His locker emptied. Jacob checked every system. No trace. Malone had vanished. Bill, meanwhile, made his move. He announced publicly that he was stepping away from all public business. No more town meetings. No more committee leadership. He issued a bland statement citing personal matters and changing priorities. But the town wasn't stupid. People remembered Kenny. People whispered. And whispers grow louder when left unanswered. Ashley, who had been silent through it all, finally approached Jacob in private. She handed him a flash drive. "I kept this from Kenny's last checkup," she said. "He asked me to record it, said he didn't trust anyone else." Jacob plugged it in that night. The recording was short. Kenny spoke softly, but there was no mistaking the fear in his voice. "They're trying to shut me up. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." That was it. No names. No details. Just a man who knew his time was running out. Jacob sent the file anonymously to 3 local reporters the next day. Then he packed a bag. He left the badge on his desk. No statement. No press. Just an empty chair. By the following week, the story broke wide open. The local news ran the Kenny story under the headline, "Buried in Silence." Details leaked: the suppressed autopsy, the deleted files, the family connections. A new investigation was opened. Martin was arrested for obstruction and destruction of evidence. He didn't fight it. Bill was summoned by the grand jury. Malone was still missing. Jacob watched it all from a cabin 3 towns over. No phone. No visitors. Just the steady hum of the radio and the ache of knowing he hadn't saved anyone. Not Kenny. Not his family. Not himself. But at least now, the silence had ended. Some truths don't bring peace. But they stopped the lies. And that was enough. Rain fell steadily that night, slicking the roads outside the cabin where Jacob now lived in quiet exile. He had made peace with the consequences of his choice, resigning from the force, walking away from the courtroom storm that followed. But peace was a fragile thing, and the ghosts he'd tried to leave behind had learned to follow him. The news hadn't stopped. Not after the first wave of arrests. Not after the grand jury hearing. And not after Martin Richardson's plea deal, which had shielded him from a full sentence in exchange for full cooperation. The headlines grew sharper: local dynasty crumbles, detective vanishes after indictment, family secrets fuel town scandal. But no one talked about the man who'd cracked it open. Jacob's name never appeared. And he made sure it stayed that way. Until the envelope arrived. No return address. No markings. Inside, a single photo. Taken from across a parking lot. Blurry. Rain-soaked. But clear enough to make out the man stepping out of a car near the edge of town. Malone. Still alive. Still nearby. Jacob stared at the photo for a long time, then flipped it over. Scribbled in shaky handwriting were 4 words: "He's not done yet." By morning, Jacob was back in town. He didn't alert anyone. Didn't stop to visit Bill, who was now under house arrest awaiting sentencing. Didn't speak to Martin, who had moved into a halfway house under heavy public scrutiny. He went straight to the gas station where the photo had likely been taken. The attendant remembered the man. Said he paid in cash, didn't speak much. Drove an old black sedan. No plates. Jacob stayed in his car the rest of the day, watching the road. Watching for movement. Then, Just before dusk, the sedan appeared again. It parked near the edge of the lot, same stall as in the photo. Jacob followed. Malone drove slow, weaving through side streets, eventually heading out toward the industrial district. Jacob's hands gripped the wheel tighter with every turn. It wasn't until they reached the old textile plant abandoned for years that Malone finally stopped. Jacob parked a block away and approached on foot. The gate was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and dust. He stepped through the skeletal remains of machines, tracing footprints left in puddles of rainwater. Then he heard Ida cough. Faint. Human. Malone was sitting on a metal bench, a pistol resting beside him. I knew you'd come, he said. Jacob stood still. Why are you back? Didn't have anywhere else to go. Malone chuckled bitterly. You think guys like me get to disappear? Not with all the things I know. You were warned. You could have run. Malone shrugged. I did. Then I realized something: you can't outrun a family like ours. Not really. You just delay the collapse. Jacob took a step forward. What are you planning? I'm not planning anything, Malone said. But someone is. There are people who know about what Bill and Martin did. People who paid to keep it quiet. You think Kenny was the only one? There were others. Jacob felt something cold spread through him. Names. Malone shook his head. I'm not giving you names. I'm giving you time. There's a storm coming. Bigger than this town. Bigger than me. When it hits, you'll wish you stayed gone. He picked up the pistol, set it on his lap, but didn't raise it. I'm tired, Jacob. You think that matters now? No, Malone said. But it's the truth. Jacob turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The next morning, the news broke. Malone had been found dead, gunshot to the chest, pistol in hand. Official ruling: suicide. Jacob knew better. Malone had been many things, but never a coward. That shot was too clean. Too surgical. But the department wrapped it up quickly. They were eager to close the chapter, bury the shame. Jacob visited Bill one last time, now confined to the old family property under court order. Bill was thinner. Quieter. No more sermons about loyalty. Just a man watching his legacy rot. They got Malone, Jacob said. But they're not done. Bill looked up, his eyes dim. They'll come for you too. You know that. I'm not afraid of them. Bill smiled weakly. Then you haven't learned anything. Jacob left without another word. Ashley reached out to him weeks later. She had seen the papers. Knew Malone's death didn't sit right. She'd been collecting her own pieces, quiet interviews, overlooked records. She'd found mentions of a name that kept surfacing around Kenny's files and Vernon's transfers. A private entity, a shell company with no traceable ownership, that had been tied to several payouts over the years. You were right, she said over the phone. This wasn't about one man. Or one crime. It was about protecting an entire system. Jacob nodded silently. What are you going to do? He thought about it. About the weight of the files in his hands again. About the wreckage he'd left behind and the bodies now buried under layers of secrecy. He didn't want vengeance. He wanted clarity. I'm going to finish what I started, he said. Because truth doesn't end at one grave. And justice doesn't stop at family.